beings. Oh, there's one more. I'm Beverly Heasley. I'm the Enterprise Systems Supervisor here at Citrus. I was asked to do just a quick intro or intermediate Excel overview. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my camera in just a minute and share my screen. But before I do that, I am going to share a file so that we can both work on the same file at once if you'd like to follow along. So let me go ahead and do that. Meanwhile, people are still trickling in. I hope the opening session was good. Okay, so I just went ahead and sent a fall 2019 schedule sample out into the chat. So if you want to use that as a sample file to follow along on your computer, you can do that. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera now because I'll be sharing my screen and you're not really going to see me anyway, but feel free, I will be monitoring the chat, or you can also just chime in if for some reason I didn't you know, I wasn't clear on something, or if you had an additional question about something we're reviewing today, I will do my best to get to your questions. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, I didn't open up my file myself, so let me go ahead and do that, and then I can go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So the reason why I picked this file, I may have to go back and back in again. The link they gave me was not to be the participant, and or excuse me, so the yeah, I'm also having an issue. I was provided a link, but I was supposed to be a co-host. However, for some reason, it is not allowing me to share my screen because it's not recognizing me as the host. So I will be right back, and let's see if we can get this resolved. No, I don't see it. I'm not sharing anything right now, and that's because I for some reason it's not recognizing me as the host. So I will be right back. If anybody jumps in and wonders what happened, you can feel free to give them a quick catch up in terms of the fact that for some reason it's not letting me be the host. So give me a moment. Let's see if we can fix this. No, that didn't seem to work. Let me try one more thing before I try to get a hold of someone from classified development or faculty staff development to see if we can't get some troubleshooting on the setup of this Zoom call. I'll be right back. Oh, there we go. All right. So we do have, it does look like I am the host now. So let's see if we can't jump right in. Again, I am, oh, here. There we go. I'm Bev Heasley. I am the Enterprise System Supervisor. I'm sorry we had just a little moment where it was not recognizing me as host, so it was not allowing me to share the screen. If you haven't already, in the chat, and let me share the file one more time in case you just came in. I do have just a sample file you can use. If you want to go ahead and try and follow along. So I'm going to shut off my video in just a moment so that I can share my screen, and we can then move forward. There isn't any student information on this file. It's literally just a class schedule. So, and it's actually a class schedule from a few years ago. So yeah, should be pretty straightforward. Okay, let's get started. Let me stop the video and let me share my screen and hopefully do that successfully now. There we go. All right, can you see an Excel? I don't think I've shared the correct one. Let's try that again. Got a lot of things here. All right, are you seeing an Excel spreadsheet or are you seeing my Zoom chat? I think it's still not working.
Excel spreadsheet on my end.
Okay, very good. All right. Let me try sending the file one more time. I'm not sure why it's not picking up. Anybody else having issues with the Excel spreadsheet? The file should be in the chat. It should just be an icon above it. Did you guys, anybody else having issues? Save. It is an XLS, so it should be fine. It's a permission thing, spreadsheet only. Okay. So was anyone able to open up the file? Yes. Okay. Oh. Okay, so a number of people were, and we have one person said that they could not. Okay. All right. So let me try doing a real quick conversion and just an older version of Excel, just in case. Here, let me stop sharing for a minute. Just in case it's just the fact that it's in your file format. Now let's try saving it again one more time. There. There we go. Okay. All right, let me do one more file share and see if I can't. All right, that is an oh. Okay. Try one more time. All right, here we go. This is an older version, so it's a .xls and not a .xlsx file. Both will work for what we're doing here. So whether you can open up one or the other, they are essentially the same file. It's just an older version. So let me go ahead and do this again. Can you see an Excel spreadsheet? I hope so. How are you guys doing? That worked. Okay, so some folks just needed the older Excel version, and others were, yeah, so you should see a file now in the chat box, and I do see a number of folks have it open. So I'm going to start just a little bit at the beginning, and then I'm going to continue to move forward from that point, only because when people kind of jump into an intermediate Excel class, they may be familiar with things, and they tend to be familiar with things as they've needed to learn it. And that can be different from what you would see in a normal, Excel beginning class. So I'm hoping that everyone is familiar with the fact that Excel is a grid, and each grid has a little cell. These little boxes here are kind of referred to as a cell. You would know the name of the cell by essentially the letter and the number of the cell. So for example, the cell that's highlighted right now on my sheet is J3. And if I were to click over here, this would be I15, and you can just see that by running up and running across. Additionally, Excel can have what is called a sheet, which is what you're looking at right now. And in an Excel file, you can actually have multiple sheets. So here you see a fall 2019. And then you also see a fall 2019. And this one just has also the title there for you. So you can have many sheets. Sometimes people have sheets for, every month of the year. They'll have sheets for maybe different time periods. Whatever grouping makes sense to you, that is the way that you would put those sheets together. The beauty of Excel is the fact that obviously you can organize things much like you would a table in Word, except that it has a lot of additional built-in functions and mathematical operators that you can do. But before we even get to that point, you'll notice that if you open up your Excel spreadsheet, you can see over here on the side in the AB column, you see nothing but a bunch of pound signs. And what that represents is that a value is too long to be displayed in the cell. Rather than just cut it off and just cut off numbers or digits that could be very important, it's telling you here that it's just this column is simply not wide enough to show the value. There is a very easy way to resize all of your columns. Up here in between the corner of the A1 cell is the select all button. And that selects all of the columns in that sheet, the sheet that's active. And if you double click in between any one of the cell columns, it will automatically resize all of those columns to be the length that it needs to display the value. Now, of course, you need to be a little bit careful with that, because if you have a very long value, it may make that column very wide. So just something to keep in mind. If you need to do very quick formatting, you can always click on that A1 and then double click to resize your columns. Okay, and then the last thing I kind of want to review before we really get into some of the more math operators here is one of the most common things that we see is that as you scroll down, you'll notice that this first column here, this first row, I should say, is sticky. It's staying up at the top. So while you see here, it's going from row 1 to row 2 to row 3. As I scroll down, you'll notice that now it goes from row 1 to row 38. And so that is so that that top row can be visible to anybody who still needs to know what those headers are. If your file, or if you inherit a file that is not already doing that, you can do that pretty quickly here on the view, and then saying freeze panes and freeze that top row. So you can always freeze panes so that, as you scroll down, excuse me, you're not losing that header data. And you can still see, especially as you get down, further down and you get across, you might not know what this N is representing anymore. So that is just some very simple pieces. You'll notice if you've used or worked with Word, you get a lot of the same formatting, font size, bold, italic, underline, cell background color, and the text color, alignment, those types of things. Those are all very much so the same. Where we do see differences is obviously, again, as I was saying, is in the calculation. You can do a lot more calculations in Excel than you can with any other of the regular Word suite. So I scrolled over a little bit so that we could see some enrollments. And you could see here that the max enrollment for whatever this course was 25. The current enrollment is 9, and the seats available is 16. This comes out of Banner calculated, but had you not had this readily available, you could have actually calculated it yourself. I'm going to go ahead and just select this column. I just clicked on the line, it selected the entire column. I'm going to right click and insert to insert a column. And in order to do that calculation, any kind of calculation that you want, you always will begin with that equal sign. Equal sign always tells Excel that you are starting to do some sort of calculation. And here you can do the same types of calculation symbols as you would in normal mathematical writing for addition and subtraction. So if I wanted to subtract 25 minus 9, I could type 25 minus 9, and it will tell me 16, which is the correct answer. But that is not really the magic of Excel. The magic of Excel is that rather than having to type out 25 minus 9, I can still start with that equal sign and click on the cell itself, which in this case is W2, and hit that minus sign and come over here and do X2. That way, if this number or this number were ever to change, if it changed to 30, this would automatically update without any other change. If I had just done the 25 minus 9, I would have had to come over here and updated the cell as well. So plus and minus obviously are the exact same operators. Where you see a little bit of a change is that in multipliers and divisors, multiplier is actually the star key, and divisor is the slash key. So if I needed to divide for some reason, it would be, if I wanted to divide 9 into 30 to get a percentage, it would be equal to 9 and then a slash and then 30 in order to get that percentage. How's everybody doing so far? Hopefully this is, you guys are like, let's get to the intermediate, because you might probably already know this piece, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of the other pieces, which is once you get past regular addition and subtraction, you can also use parentheses to do a priority. You can actually, there are a ton, and I mean a ton of built-in functions that will automatically do pieces for you. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to hide some of these columns that I don't need right now, just so I can bring some data closer together so you can see it side by side. So I'm going to take, let's see, it looks like column F through column S, and I'm going to right click and just say hide that from me right now. You'll notice that it gets a little dark line to show me that there are some hidden columns. You can also tell by moving across, you see it says A, B, C, D, E, and then it goes to T. So that also tells me there are some missing or hidden columns right now. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to do just a couple of other calculations using some of the functions. The easiest functions that you can see are to sum. So you could add all the enrollment if you wanted to. I'm going to hit Control and End, and it's going to take me all the way down to the bottom of my screen, all the way down to the bottom and end of my spreadsheet. But if I come back over here and scroll, I could find out where is my max enrollment? Oh, here we go. I could hit an equal. And I think most people are familiar with the sum function, right? Equal sum. You can either type it out, that would be W2 and then colon and W1809, which is the last row in this column, and get a total maximum enrollment of 52,190. But that might not be helpful. You might, so that's usually the easiest and the most introductory function that people tend to see. If you don't want to memorize, and you do not have to memorize any of your functions, you can simply click on this little FX key. And if you click on it, and there is already a function there, it will come up and tell you the arguments, and it will tell you how to use the function. But I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So I just deleted that cell, and I'm going to click on FX. And now it's going to give me a bunch of functions that are there. Sum, average, if, count, max, min, sum if. And so let's look at sum if. So this will add the cells if it meets the criteria. So let's say I just wanted to see what, let's pick on photo. I think that's photo, PHTO. Let's see how much the max enrollment could be for photo. So that range, so the range is the range I want evaluated. So the one that I want evaluated is actually not this one, not the W. I want the range to be evaluated is going to be the subject code, because I want to find out, is it PHTO, right? And if it is PHTO, now I want to sum this. Okay. And actually, I'm going to fix it a little bit because it's going to try and add its own cell within itself, and that makes it a little bit of a loop. And so you can see it's looking in column D. If it sees PHTO, it's adding that max enrollment. So now we know that the maximum enrollment that you can see for photo for that term was 318 students. Okay, now how would we know? I like to do a lot of kind of cross-checking just to make sure there's never, I haven't picked up something that I didn't intend to. And so I'm going to jump right into one of the things you can do, which is you can filter information. And so in order to do that, you'd go into the data tab and you would just click on filter. When you click on filter, you'll see that a little pull down menu happens for every single one of your columns. And I can come in here and just select what I want to view. So I'm going to unselect everything and I want to just see photo. Here's all of photo right now. And I could actually just add that up right now and see if that came up to 318. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, I know what it's doing. It's picking up all of the in between columns. Let's not do that. Let's see if this does it. Oh, interesting. So let me see what happened in my calculation, because you'll notice that if you highlight any piece and you go down to the bottom, it's going to tell you an average, a count, and a sum. Now we had 318. Did I not pick up everything? No, I did. And it had an average of 23 and a count of 12, which means there should be 12 sections and 276 is max enrollment. So what happened here in this calculation? See, that's a good reason why you'd want to cross-check. PHTO. Still showing 276. So yeah, there must be some sort of an error somewhere in that formula. But you can see here, you can kind of cross check. I'll have to troubleshoot that later because there's got to be a reason why it's not. It must be picking up one additional class somewhere. But that is sum if. Sum if is if it has any kind of it's meeting any kind of criteria. The cousin to sum if would be count if, which is exactly the same, except that you're counting if it meets the criteria. So I'm going to just look for it. There it is. And oh. So this would actually work better here because you could just say, there it is, okay. For this range, oh, and again, I need to fix that a little bit. Say, type it in, D2 through D, 9, and is the criteria 12. Yeah, and that's what we expected, 12. There you go. Now, one of the other things I do want to mention is that this list is just in any which way type of order. You can actually sort. So if I wanted to sort it, I would just hit again. I just go to data across the top on the ribbon bar, and I would say sort. And I would say, let's just do it by subject, and then we can add a level and just do it by course. So there you go. Anything that looks like a number should be sorted by a number. That sounds good to me. And now you can see everything here. Are there any questions so far before I move forward? Checking the chat.
Can you do that last like double layer sort one more time?
Sure. Okay, so that would be here on sort. And you could just add or delete. You do want to check if your first row has a header information or not, or else you will. If you don't, if I were to unclick this and then do it, it would include this first row, and then it would get sorted within it. So you don't want to do that if you do have a header. And then you just pull down. You just say subject is what I'm going to sort it on, and then you just click on add level and course. I'm just going to ask me again because right now these numbers are actually stored as text, and I'll fix that in a little bit. Sort is kind of nice because you don't have to just sort alphabetically. You can sort by other things as well. So I'm going to take these AJ classes. I'm going to hit home, and I'm going to make them yellow. Ooh, that's bright. All right, maybe not that yellow. Let's try a lighter yellow. That's too bright for a Tuesday. Let's go with a softer yellow. Oh, there you go. That's a nicer yellow. Now, the reason why I did that is because here again on data sort, I can actually sort on a cell color. So I could say all these yellows I want on top. And it will move them to the top because I told it that I wanted the yellow cells on the top. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be alphabetical. It can be on other criteria. And here, I'll just pull this down so you can see. It can be a font color. It can be a cell icon, a cell color. And like I said, it could be color. And you could even say, I don't want the yellow on top. I want the yellow on the bottom. You could do that as well. And you can do Z to A. Okay. You can even do a custom list. So a custom list is where you write custom values. So here you can see some examples. So if you need something sorted by days of the week, you wanted to go Sunday through Saturday, you can make it do that. Days of the month or anything else custom. If so, you just write your list entries and hit OK. So yeah, you can do a lot in the sort for you. Okay. One of the other things I do want to mention, let me come back down to the bottom. Or with my, oh, I might have lost it, my count. Yes, so let me just do another one.
Can I, on the count if,
Mhm.
there was a criteria if it's a number.
Mhm.
How do I type that in? I put in the word number, I put a hashtag, and it didn't count the numbers in the column that met that criteria.
Oh, so you wanted any, so let's see, like, for example, you wanted here on max enrollment, to count it if it had a max enrollment of 20, maybe?
I actually copied all of the math classes from Wingspan to see how many students were enrolled as of last night.
Okay,
And some of the cells have words instead of names because it's a copy of Wingspan pasted in the cell. Some of the rows in that column have words and some have numbers. And
Okay.
I only want to count the number of rows that have numbers in them.
oh, okay.
To count, basically to count the number of sections. I already summed up all the numbers that were in that column because it didn't add letters and words, it added only the numbers. So when I did the count if command, it said the criteria can be a number, but it didn't explain how you specify that you want it to be only numbers that you're counting.
Yeah, and so, yeah, so here, then you would use regular count instead of count if, because it counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers versus count if.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it'll ignore all words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Try that out. Thanks.
No
I
problem.
just so happen to have a folder, a file that I'm looking at.
You're like, I have my favorite file I'd rather use instead. And that's fine if you would prefer it. I just wanted to give everybody a starting point in the event that they didn't come in with something. Also kind of helps for following along. That works. Perfect. Good. Yeah. And just so you know, because you're always welcome to call me or try to reach out to me. But I have to say, Excel is pretty reasonable in terms of their help. Their help has improved a lot over the years, and they've done a lot better with actually getting help. So you could see I immediately clicked on count. And when I did that, all the count functions came up. And I clicked on it and I thought, oh, count if it's a criteria. No, count A is if it's any cell that is not blank. And count does the ones that are a number. So as soon as I saw that one, I said, this is really the one that you want instead of count if. I did want to mention really quickly, you can also use wildcards when you're looking for search criteria. So if I were to do that count if again, here, I'll just put it in again. Here we go. You can actually still say, and I'm just going to type it in, and it doesn't actually have to be case sensitive. I like to put it case sensitive just because I've always been like that. You can do like PH, let's see if this will work, H star, and it'll actually count anything that looks like a P, starts with PH, and whether it be PHYS, or I don't know if there are others, but anything else that has that. So if you're just looking for partial match, you can use that star as your wild card. So there you go. Okay, I'm checking the chat really quickly to see if I missed anything else. I'm not hearing anything, so we're going to continue to go. All right. I'm going to move over to the second tab really quickly just because this has a little bit more of what we're going to go into next, which is a little bit of the text manipulation that you can do. So again, just as a reminder, you can go between the A and the 1 and double click between two of the columns. And that will resize all of those columns for you. Here you have a bunch of text. And I try to make sure that there was text in this to work with. And so one of the things that you can do, I'm going to go ahead and just insert a column, is that you can change the case of your text pretty easily with functions. There are some really common ones. If you needed something to be uppercase, you can just do equal upper. and click on the cell that you want to be upper. And that's going to make it all uppercase for you. Same thing, you have one that is lower. So if you needed this to be all lowercase for some reason, you could do that. This one's a little bit harder to see, so I'm going to change this a little bit so you can see it. See how this one is now not correctly titled, or it should be both should be capitalized. You can also use proper, and proper will capitalize each word in that string. Okay, so you can fix text pretty easily using functions that do that. One of the other things that you can do is if you need to take a piece of a cell, you don't need the whole cell, you just need a piece of the cell, you can do that as well. Is everybody okay with the text manipulation, upper, lower, and proper? I feel like that's pretty normal.
Down in the rows 23 through 29, the introduction to administration of justice, there's alternation. So
it would actually still capitalize all of them, unfortunately. So proper would capitalize the T, all the T's and the O's. So the two,
it's not so much a proper command, it's just
yeah. So proper would work
capitalizes
pretty
for
well. It's going to capitalize every word because it
Not like
doesn't know
grammar.
enough about
Yeah.
and those yeah.
common.
Yeah.
Common. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go ahead. I'm going to delete these. We don't need these. But here's a good example. I'm going to go ahead and put in a quick column here. So this is term 2020. But let's say that I just need the actual year, and that happened in 2020, or excuse me, 2020. So I don't need the last 2 digits of the 2020 term. What I can do is I can go, and there's both a left and a right version of this. Is again, I start with the equals. I'm going to go left, and I'm going to say I just need the left 4 characters of this term code. Now I have the year. I could have done it if I needed just the last 4 of the right. You can do anything with left and right. So you could do that. I do want to mention also, just in case you weren't familiar, if you move your cursor to the bottom corner, you'll notice that my cursor changes from kind of a real thick plus sign into kind of a darker plus sign. That is the fill command, and if you just double click, it's going to fill the whole column down for you. Okay. So you can do that pretty quickly without any other piece of it. Now, it used to be in older versions, and if you do have an older version of Excel, you would actually have to drag it down. It's a little bit of a pain, but in any of the newer versions, you just double click. Whoops. Let me delete these so it knows to go all the way down. And it'll go all the way down to the 1800 rows that needed to be populated. Easy and done. Okay. Let's see, there was one other piece I wanted to talk about with this. My notes. Okay, how are we doing on time? Ooh, we're doing okay on time. Good. So, and notice here I don't have my top row. And I'm just gonna put in year. So I'll go here to view, freeze panes, freeze top row, so that as I'm scrolling, that still shows up. So yeah, I could have done it from the well, actually here would be a good example. If I needed it from the right, I could have done it from this one. I could have said equals right. Oops, if I can spell right correctly. And I could have just said I need these numbers and I need the last 4. And it would have given me that if I really needed that part of it. So yeah, whichever one, wherever you need that to happen from. Every so often, you might inherit data that for whatever reason has extra spaces. Maybe they were inputted and whoever did it put in some extra spaces. And now you need to take out these spaces, 1, 2, 3, whatever. This is where what you can use is called the trim function. And what trim does is it trims any spaces out of it. So whereas here, it's a little hard to tell, but there is a space there. And here there's a few spaces, and here there's a few spaces. Here there are no actual spaces, to be honest with you. It's just the word itself. Okay, let's see where else are we moving on here. Oh, yes.
So that would remove the spaces between, like, introduction to the administration of justice. Oh, spaces in between words.
Yeah, no, because it's only taking leading and trailing spaces.
Okay.
Leading and trailing spaces. So here you can see it right here, and that shows. Just gonna say, oh, let me just show you. There we go. Leading and trailing spaces only. So yeah, I wouldn't take those out. The other thing that sometimes happens, and this one is a little hard to tell, hard to demonstrate, because you only see it when you run into it, is if, again, if you inherit a file and it was maybe downloaded from an external source, occasionally there is what we call a non-printable character. And a non-printable character is a character you can't see, but somehow will create problems. And you'll know that it's creating problems because you'll try to calculate on the field and it won't calculate. You'll try to add it and it's not adding. And one of the most common problems is a non-printable character, especially if it came from a downloaded source of some sort, and you need to pull that back out. So if this had some sort of strange character that you could not see, you can actually use the clean function, and clean will take out all of those special weird, what they call a non-printable character. So that then you can begin to do your calculations on it without having to worry about that interfering with whatever you're doing with the function or anything else. So just so you know, if you have an issue, have the clean function there for you.
When you mean a non-printable character, is that some sort of character in a font that the printer can't print? Or what if that was a word that was in text that's white, can't see?
It could be text that's white, but it could also be conversions between two different systems. So like if the parent system that it comes from, maybe it's like one of the third parties like Foothill Transit that's sending, you know, over information, or somewhere else. And maybe they're using Unix and we're using you know, Windows, and that conversion somehow results in a non-printable character. But sometimes you'll see that. Actually, I ran into that just recently downloading financial statements, and it was a non-printable character. So if you're using that at home for some reason, and all of a sudden the telltale sign will be you're trying to do some sort of a calculation or a function on it, and it's not behaving. Usually it's an indicator, especially if it was something that you did not create. If you created the spreadsheet and you did all the data entry, or if, Argos is pretty good, it doesn't tend to have that issue. But if it's another third-party source, or you know, or it's just something that maybe you've inherited, it might have it, and so that could be a place to try, is to use that clean function and then continue on with your calculation and see if that fixes it. And I couldn't really replicate it here because this came from Argos, and Argos doesn't tend to have that issue.
Yeah, my math lab classes are now Canvas linked, so I can easily import the grades, but I used to have to download them and they were a different format that would open up in Excel. I could see where that might have created such a, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Because I'm not exactly sure what Canvas is using for its download. And, you know, good luck getting the entire world on a single standard. It just
Right.
hasn't happened yet. It's probably not going to. So let's see, the other piece that I wanted to look at. Okay, back over to the fall 2019 tab. Let me go back up to the front. I just hit Control Home to get back up to the front pretty quickly. I'm going to hide some more columns just to bring some information over for now. Okay. There are date calculations you can do. Now, one of the things I do want to mention about date is that Excel and so many other programs, when they're dealing with date, the way they actually use the date is that the date is represented as a numerical value as the distance from January 1st, 1970. And so sometimes you might see a date come in as just a number. And if that's the case, it's not an issue. You just need to convert it back to a date. But that is why you see a number, is because it's showing you the actual numerical representation of that distance. It is not, it's not an issue, it's not a problem. But let me go ahead and go ahead and insert. And I'm going to show you just one more. Okay, then. Actually, that's here. Let's see if it comes up here. There should be a date difference. Oh, you know what? I think it's already deprecated. So if you want to see the difference between two dates, I think you can simply just do this. Now it's in a 113 days between the two. So if you needed a date difference, you can simply minus them. You used to have to do date diffs, and I think they already took that out, so that's good. But yeah, there you go. If you need to see the difference between two dates, you only have to just subtract them. So that's pretty good. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Because the next one that we're going to move is going to be a little bit more meaty, because we're going to go into match and index. Okay. All right, so you'll notice that this table or this sheet itself does not have, and I'll go ahead and hide these so you can see, does not actually have a course title, but this one does. And so there's a couple ways that you can actually pull the course title over into this sheet. One is, of course, VLOOKUP. But VLOOKUP does have some it has some limitations, and so I'm not personally a fan of VLOOKUP, and I almost never use it anymore because of sometimes of the flexibility. I will also say that in the newest version of Excel, there's something called XLOOKUP. And XLOOKUP does have some flexibility, but the only problem is that almost no one's on that version yet. So you have some backwards compatibility issues. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a column. And the most common way that people would pull this this title over is to use VLOOKUP. So you go equals VLOOKUP. Oops, I am not typing today at all. So I'm going to say I want to look up this value. You'll notice that it's already giving me hints on what I need to do. I could also click here and it would bring it up in just an easier way. I would just click this button to select the value that I'm looking for. I would click here to talk about where is the value that I need to get. Go. And then the column that I need, I believe, is 6. And I'll show you why I know that's it. Oh, it might be 7. Because once it does the match, it does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I actually needed column number 7. And now you can see that my course title has come in, because what I did is I said, let me just pull this up. I want you to look up the CRN that exists in that sheet. So the lookup value is this CRN here that's on this row. The table array, of course, is that whole table that I want you to search for that value. And then I want you just to display what is in column 7 of that row when you find it. Okay. And that's how you get that. come in. They all come in. Oh, this one wasn't found. There you go. It's probably not on the list. So that's one way of doing it. But VLOOKUP does have some limitations. VLOOKUP sometimes has problems if the CRN is not or excuse me, if the value is not in the leftmost column. So there's some fine point details if you're looking for things and it's not where it's expecting to find that value. So like I said, I tend to go with another piece, which is called index and match. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in separate columns so that you can see the difference. And then I'll put it together so you can see it nested, because you can actually use functions inside of other functions. You do not have to do it the way I'm going to show you. I'll show it to you the kind of the long way, and then I'll show it to you the short way. So the match function will find a match for whatever value you're looking for. So here I'm saying I want to see where this CRN exists, and I'll just say in this column. And then the match type will be 0, which means an exact match. Oh, don't tell me we're still. No. What did I do here? Oh, I'm missing that value. Look at value. There we go. Okay, and so what this match will do is it's going to tell me the row number where I'm going to find this. So it thinks that in row 24, I'm going to find 20115. So let's go to row 24. 20115, it is correct. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that down. You can see some ones that are not found. That's okay. Now index will return a value on any row of any column. So here on index, I can say for this array, array is just a fancy term for a table. I'm just hitting a comma to get the next one. I want row 24 and I want column number 7. And it's going to give me that piece. Now, a funny thing will happen if I just come over here and flash fill. The reason why is because if you notice on the actual Excel piece itself, it says it's going from A1 to G1806. If I go to the next row, it says it's going to A2 to 1807 and it's moving. It really shouldn't move, but it does because it does everything relative to one another. And so let's talk a little bit about a relative cell reference versus an absolute. A relative cell reference means that I want this row, generally speaking, and if this row moves down, I want it to go down along with. I want my calculations to go down along with it. If that's the case, you just keep everything as is. But there are cases, for example, this table here is not adding any other values that we know of. And so it is always going to end at 1806, and it's always going to start at row 2. So I need to tell this function here, don't move to A2. We saw the move to A2, the move to A1, and the move to A3. I'm always going to want it to be A1 to 1806. And the way you do that is with the $sign. $sign is the character that tells you that this is now fixed and it will not move. Okay. You'll notice that because of the fact that it went relative, it went over here and said, okay. Now I can actually nest one inside the other so it can be within one. But we're running a little short on time and I want to make sure we get to pivot tables. Are there any questions before I move into pivot tables? Everyone napping? Maybe.
The absolute doesn't have to be in both the, what if you put the money symbol between the letter and number for the top left
So,
corner of
okay,
the
yeah,
ring
you
and
can.
did it in the,
Yeah, and so
didn't do it
what,
in the second, then it wouldn't.
yeah. So that's a good question. If I were to put it here, I'm locking both the row and the column. So if I put it here, I'm telling it absolutely always that column and absolutely always that row. In this case, I really didn't mean to, because the one that was changing was the row. And since that was where my problem was, that's the piece that I locked down. But if both were moving and all of a sudden it said B1, B2, C3, D4, then yes, I would want to put a $sign to tell it that it's an absolute reference on both.
You do that before the letter and in between the letter and the number.
Before the letter and before the number.
I see. So the
Yeah.
star before the column association makes it absolute.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the $sign is a $sign.
You were only concerned with the columns.
With
I
the
mean,
row.
the rows. The rows.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
Okay.
'Cause I was only concerned with the row. But yeah, if you ever ended up using any kind of calculation and it's starting to move, they're saying, no, the value is always here. You can then use that $ symbol to basically lock it in place.
Wasn't an apostrophe used for the absolute before the $ symbol? That's what I thought.
No, apostrophe has been used for references of sheets, and double quotes are used for strings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm gonna go ahead and delete these just because it's got some errors. You'll notice that my my data has some issues. You'll see that green flag. A green flag is kind of an informational item, and a red flag means you usually have a problem. Although there is another red flag that means comment. But if I were to click on here, you'll see there's a little triangle and it says that this number in this cell is formatted as text. And yes, from an Excel point of view, there is a difference between a number 1 as an actual numerical character and an actual value for a number itself. And so here it thinks that these ones are text. If I wanted to fix it, I would have to select all of them really quickly. Selected. And it come back up to the top where the little error is showing up. Uh-oh, now it's not showing me the error. Let me do a little thing. And then you would just say, oh, come on. It's not behaving. There we go. And you can say convert to number. And you'll notice because now it moves over to the right-hand side by default. You'll also, let's see. Okay, so let me actually undo that because I don't have to worry about that right now. Okay, so let's talk about pivot tables. Pivot tables are my favorite because what they do is they allow you to summarize data really quickly and easily. So what you can do is you can put together data really quickly and easily, but there are a few rules. If you are going to use a pivot table, you cannot have merged cells. So if I have any kind of merged cells, those are bad news. The other thing that I'm going to do in cleanup is it doesn't tend to like blank values very much. And since these aren't really carrying anything, I'm going to go ahead and delete these and this one as well. And this guy. And clean up. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick cleanup. I have the census 2 right now. Credit, which is coming. And my okay. So I did some pretty reasonable cleanup. So yeah, the big rules before you start a pivot table: no merge cells. Try no blank cells if you can, although it's not as bad as it used to be. The earlier versions really did not like blank cells. So in order to do what it is, it's easiest to just show what a pivot table can do versus explaining each piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say insert pivot table. It's picked up my item. I'm going to put this, just check and make sure it's actually picked up all the rows and columns that you expected it to. And in my case, it has. And then you can say, where do you want this pivot table to be placed? I always recommend a new sheet because then, you don't have to worry about it interfering with anything else. When that happens, you get the little pivot table here and it doesn't have anything in it. And what you want to do with the pivot table is you want to visualize what you want to see in your pivot table. So what I might want to see across the top on the columns are the term. If I had multi-term, that would be great. What I might want to see down the side are all of the subjects, and that would be what I would want in the row. So here you can see the row. All I did was I clicked on it and dragged it to the area that I want to see. And then let me grab the Maxen rule. And let's see if I can make that sum. So you can see it went ahead and gave me a sum of all the enrollment, the max enrollment by subject. I could even do it by subject and course number if I really wanted to see what that looked like. Okay. And you can see that that comes pretty quickly without any real hard work, I would say, because as long as you can think about what you want your pivot table to look like, you're in good shape. You can also do multiple types of calculations. So I could come here and I could say CRN, and I don't want the sum of the CRN. I can click on it and say value field settings. I want the count. How many CRNs? So here I can see for accounting 100, I have 135 seats and 6 sections. You don't really need a sum here. I could get rid of that if I wanted to, but you can see how quickly that pulls things together. Really easy. Was anybody able to make a pivot table along with me, I hope? Maybe. Hearing radio silence. I hope that that's good news.
I will later.
You will later. Yeah, and if you make a mistake, the beauty is you can just grab whatever you think is a mistake and take it out. There you go. Just take them out. It's pretty hard to break. And so yeah, you can come in. I can come in and say on campus. Okay, on campus versus off campus. What's that looking like? All right. I can look at that really quickly. I can look at schedule code. All right, for the 02s, 04s, 72, 74. 02 is lecture, 04 is lab, 72 is distance ed, and so is 74. So you can see pretty quickly. I mean, think about how you would actually do this if you just had this sheet and you had to calculate it together. You could do some subtotals and some groupings and things like that, but I feel like this has always been much faster and much easier. So you can do that. There's a lot of additional things. You can make calculated fields on this. Pivot tables have a lot of so much power, and so you could do an entire class just on pivot tables itself. But we're running a little bit out of time, and I do want to make sure I'm providing some time for questions. Are there any questions from anybody, or was there something that you were hoping to see that we didn't cover?
I have one quick question.
Sure.
When you've got different sheets like that, if you do a pivot table, if you change one thing in your original sheet, will it automatically update the pivot table?
It will not, but you can come over here to analyze, and you can say refresh, and then it will go back out and refresh.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And then another thing you can do that's a little bit nice about this is that if you're looking at some data and you're like, boy, that doesn't look right. Like maybe this 04 845 max enrollment doesn't look right. You're thinking, God, you know, I think there's a mistake here. You can actually just double click and it's going to pull a copy, not the actual data, but a copy of what is comprising that data. So you can take a deeper look at it. And that's pretty nice and easy because then you can kind of isolate data and you're not worrying about this data here. So there's just an immediate copy. Yeah, you can double click in any one of these and it will pull how it's calculating that number. And then you can look at it and be like, oh, maybe some classes it's not picking up and maybe they're not coded correctly. Or, oh yeah, we're gonna add that class, but we haven't added it yet. You can look at it from a number of different ways and then just, you know, continue from there. Other questions? I'm here for questions. 9 minutes.
Can you create some visual charts from this data?
Yeah, there are pivot charts as well that you can do. Is it over here? Bum, 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 bum. Where is it? There we go, pivot chart. Yeah. And you, yeah, probably column wouldn't work. And there you go. There's one. Just so you have to create your pivot table first, and then you can create your pivot chart. And then your pivot chart really, you know, goes without saying, you do need to have it logical. So you need to pick a pivot chart type that is logical for whatever kind of data you're displaying. And I thought I heard somebody else that had a question.
Yes, this is Karen Talby. My question is, occasionally I have a worksheet that has a lot of values, a lot of references, specifically dates and text in one cell. And I was hoping that there was a formula that will pull out sort of an if-then sort of situation, where if a cell contains a specific text or date, then to bring another cell from a different column there. I don't know. But if that text or date is not in the cell, I don't want to see something from another column.
So, let me think. You
And I
can do an if, and you can. There's also a search function to can search for strings or values if you need to look for something.
Okay.
So you could use the if and the search, and that will give you like a true false.
Oh, okay.
And then you could probably. Let's see if we can work through this really quickly. Hold on. Okay, so I'm gonna insert here. And there is an if, so let's go and pull our if. If, I think it is search. Actually, let me find the search first. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Oh no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. I thought there was another string search. Actually, there we go. Let's do another strings. Find. Yeah, find the starting position. I thought it would be search. Yeah, because I was gonna say I thought there was, and it wasn't fine. Yeah, just find. Make it logical. Where was logical? Yeah, these is would do it, but they
Okay.
only are, you can see they're kind of limited because they can only check, is this text? Is this a reference error? Is this an odd number? Is this a number? Is it not text? It's not an NA, is it logical, is it formula? So it doesn't allow you, you might be able to do something with the lookups, but actually, yeah, you probably could, because what you could do, let's try this, back to if go in here and I say, no, so I want to find, I think it is somewhere in the if.
Okay.
Can you do this? No, it's not going to let me do that. See here, it's only going to allow you to do a partial for some reason. See, here I'm telling it if this H2
Mhm.
is O2, but that's only doing a full string. It's, you'll see, notice how it's not taking the wild card. So for some reason, it won't take the wild card on kind of an inline logical test. It's a little bit annoying. So you'd probably have to do is parse out that data into another column and then do your if, because then you could do an exact logical test match.
Okay.
And then if the value is true, what you want to do then, and then if the value is false, you just do nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of a bummer that they don't, because for a regular function, it would allow the wild card.
Because I would want to say something like, if anything in column E or the range of E2 through whatever 1089
Mhm.
has a 3,
Mhm,
then come back positive or come back true.
mhm.
That's kind of the argument I'm looking for. It's like I want it to have a specific, and in
So
my case.
maybe try a match. You could say, oh, maybe we could do it that way. Let's see.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
Oh.
Matt suggested there's a Microsoft
Tell contains
support
case sensitive.
page that has
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, so you could try that. But the other thing I would say, yeah, so you could try this and you could do equals match and then do your match function, except don't do it as an exact match. So 0 is an exact match and 1 is the other.
Right.
So then look in your, look for that value that you're going to do, and then whatever you want to do for true and false.
Okay,
So you may be able to do that.
cool. Thanks.
Okay. Other questions? We've only got another minute. I want to be respectful of your time. How'd everyone do? Uh-oh. You guys fell asleep? You gave up? What happened?
UE asked for if you could talk about grouping in a pivot table. I don't know if her mic worked.
Grouping in a pivot table we would not tend to do. Grouping is actually here where you would tend to group, but you don't tend to group in a pivot table. Well, actually you can. Let me pull one more in here. The only way you would do it is if you come here, you can do like C, and then you can collapse and expand. So yeah, but you still control it through the regular pivot table methods. And anybody who needs to head out can do that. I don't want to keep anybody late, but if anybody still has questions, then you can try and troubleshoot. So thank you.
I was mentioning before that when I downloaded or imported grades from my math lab, it would download as a CSV file that I could open up in Excel.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a big deal for me. For all the students that didn't do the assignment, the cell was blank and I would just manually go in and click on it.
Mhm.
But there were teachers from like Tennessee that had sections with 350 students. And when you're importing several grades for over several homework assignments, and there's blanks all over the page. Is there a fast way to replace a blank in a cell with a 0? I mean, it was just
Yeah,
numbered.
you can. Let me find one. Here we go. So you would you can select the column and you can find and select replace 0 with 1 and replace all. That's all.
So if you just leave, find what blank, then if the cell's blank, find and replace. Where was that again?
Right here. So yeah, you want to select where you want to go, and right here, and you just say replace.
That's crazy. They always said they couldn't do it. No, I just downloaded
They
a file.
lied. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's a CSV file. It's some must have
Yeah,
something
the
to do
other
with that.
problem is, so CSV is just means it's comma separated, and that it doesn't have any special formatting. So they should not have. They would not be able to do calculations. They would not be able to merge cells. They would not be able to do formatting. They can't do pivot table because CSV is like a plain text file, and because it's a plain text file, the only thing it does is it has a value, a comma, and then the next value. It's just supposed to be very simple. And so yeah, because of that, you can't do so you could still do this find and replace and still save it as a CSV, but you couldn't do too much more because of the fact that the CSV file itself is a very, very simple file. All right, well, I don't want to keep anybody, but if
Thank
anybody
you.
else has questions, I still see 14, and so I don't know if there's other questions out there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Go have a good lunch. Have a good rest of your flex day. Good. Okay, all right, well, the rest of you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and kick you guys out so that you can all grab lunch, and hope you guys have a great semester. Bye, everyone.